Yo, what's going on? Mike from Mike Talk Sports. Ian Garry versus Daniel Rodriguez is about to take place this Saturday on a UFC fight night. Let me tell you guys why I think Ian Garry will win this fight against Daniel Rodriguez. I'm a big fan of both of these guys. This is going to be an absolute banger. Both guys have had somewhat problems with grapplers in their career, but this will be no problem in this fight as both of these guys are going to have a war on the feet. Ian Garry and D-Rod are both used to being the lengthier fighters in there, but what makes this fight really interesting, it is that classic southpaw versus orthodox fight with D-Rod being out of southpaw and Ian Garry primarily operating out of orthodox, and they both do have a 74-inch reach. Now, D-Rod is coming off of a loss, but it is to Neil Magny, and he outstruck Neil Magny in that fight. D-Rod is 4-1 in his last 5, and you can make a very good, sound argument. D-Rod's barely ever been outstruck in his entire UFC career. He does have a win against the Leech, which was a very controversial win, but in my opinion, D-Rod landed the more volume and the more consistent strikes against the Leech, but you can argue that Leech had more damage done in that fight. He has a win against Kevin Lee, and he does have a win against Platinum Mike Perry, whereas Ian Garry only has 4 fights in the UFC, but of course he is 4-0 in his UFC career. He's an undefeated prospect at 11-0 in total. In Ian Garry's last fight, he beat Kenan Song, and it was an absolute masterclass from Ian Garry. He looked phenomenal in the striking realm, not only in terms of his inside and outside boxing, but in terms of his kickboxing as well. He basically won 14 minutes and 50 seconds of that fight. The reason why I say he lost 10 seconds of that fight is because, of course, at the end of round 1, he got caught with an absolute bomb of a strike and got dropped pretty badly. One thing I love about that moment in Ian Garry's career so far, we've seen him with bloody noses. We've seen him get damaged in his fights, and we, of course, again, saw him take a huge bong against Kenan Song in his last fight. The thing is about Ian Garry, he has a great heart, he has a very good chin, and he has a very good ability to recover. So in my opinion, I don't think Daniel Rodriguez is going to put him out with one shot. If Daniel Rodriguez ends up getting the finish in this fight, I believe it will be because of an accumulation of strikes. Both D-Rod and Ian Garry primarily start almost every single one of their combinations with that jab, and both of them do a great job establishing that jab in their fight. Of course, one throws it with the right hand, one throws it with the left hand, but besides that, they throw it with significantly different technique as well. I would describe D-Rod's jab as if someone was stabbing you with a knife and lunging into that strike. D-Rod really does a great job at closing the distance and generating power with that lead right hand jab because of the way he lunges into it and throws it in a more sloppy yet aggressive manner, whereas Ian Garry has a very by the textbook orthodox left hand jab that really is like a bullet out of a gun. And this quickness and snappiness to Ian Garry's jab not only allows him to double up that jab, but to follow up with the right straight as well. Whereas D-Rod does not follow up with a double jab or a left straight after that southpaw jab, whereas Ian Garry does this much more often. D-Rod actually has underrated movement for his size. He's a guy who's going to be very forward moving, and once he's in the center of the octagon, he's going to be a bit more plodding, whereas Ian Garry has phenomenal side to side movement and he's very good off of his back foot. Now, he does have good forward movement as well, but Ian Garry is much more likely to be fighting off the back foot in this fight against D-Rod, whereas D-Rod really is going to lose this fight early on if he finds himself off the back foot. D-Rod's one of those rare fighters who will consistently throw a combination with the same hand, so he'll start with that lead right hand jab and then he'll follow it with that lead right hand hook, not only to the body but to the face as well. D-Rod also has a very traditional boxing clinch game. He loves getting that dirty boxing, elbows in the clinch, uppercuts in the clinch, hooks to the body, hooks to the head in the clinch. Whereas Ian Garry does not operate from the clinch as much, but when he does get into the clinch, it's much more of that Muay Thai style of knees to the body, knees to the head, and elbows to the head. Now, where I really do see the advantage for Ian Garry in this fight is his counter shots, is his precision, is his timing, and in his speed. He's really going to have to channel his inner Conor McGregor. A prime 145-pound Conor McGregor did such a good job of baiting these really aggressive, bigger, more powerful strikers, such as the first Dustin Poirier fight, luring him into his inside boxing range, and then he hammers them away with those really quick counter shots. That's where I see the disadvantage for D-Rod is with those longer developing looping hooks, those longer developing sloppier jabs. I think Ian Garry is going to be able to slip those really well and counter them very effectively. D-Rod also just primarily boxes. He'll throw out some kicks out there, whereas Ian Garry does such a good job of making people forget about his boxing and distracting them from his boxing in his hands with his kicks. He's somebody who is very active in the kick game. He's going to absolutely destroy that lead leg of D-Rod. He's going to hammer him home with a lot of calf kicks, a lot of teeps to the body, side kicks to the body, roundhouse kicks to the head. He even will throw out some question mark kicks out there and some heel kicks to the head as well. My official prediction for this fight is going to be 29-28 Ian Garry. Again, I would not be surprised to see D-Rod have a really good first round or have a really good third round because he is a scrapper. But Ian Garry, I think he's going to excel in that second round, and I can even see a 30-27 scorecard for all rounds being to Ian Garry just because of that precision, that technique, and that movement from Ian Garry is honestly on a different level compared to D-Rod. If D-Rod wants to win this fight, he's going to have to make it rough. He's going to have to make it sloppy. Now, Ian Garry has solid head movement, but it's not like he has this crazy great head movement, and sometimes he does keep his head on a center line. So I do see opportunities and openings for D-Rod, again, to really jab him to death and really hammer home that jab straight and that right lead hand hook. But I do think very early on into the fight, Ian Garry is going to make an adjustment to this. He's really going to evade side to side, scale the cage really well, and use that cage to his advantage to try to get good angles off of D-Rod to set up some good strikes of his own. Both guys have somewhat of a similar output in their fights, so in my opinion, the fight is going to be won off of accuracy, not output necessarily, and Ian Garry simply, in my opinion, is the more accurate striker, not only with his jab, but with his kickboxing as well. Thanks for listening, guys. Let me know who you guys have in this fight, Ian Garry versus Daniel Rodriguez. It's going to be an absolute war, and in my opinion, this one probably takes home fight of the night. Thanks for listening, guys.